Hey, this is Gene. I'm back again. It's FA Cup final week, and I did want to respond to, for me, was a fairly good viral video that I had on Mark Goldbrige, um, and he's kind of like doing the same thing again. Um, Overall, I've got a lot of comments for me. I mean, I got 10 or 11 comments, and that's a lot for me, and I do appreciate those who responded to me. It was interesting to me, the people that were against what I had to say. Um, the average viewing time was like 90 seconds on the video. So the stuff I said later in the video is a hell of a lot more inflammatory than anything I said about Mark Goldbrige, his stage name anyway. Um, I did want to say one thing is I'm happy that somebody likes to comment on how I talk. And most people don't know that gets on this YouTube channel, because if you put Mark Goldbrige in a search somewhere, you might actually see it and you go watch it. Never saw me before. So immediately you just think I'm a stupid person, how the way I talk. And I don't like to bring it up, but about 13 years ago, I had a stroke, a pretty bad one. Didn't speak for a while, about 3 months. And I used this channel to help with my speech. And I only would talk about things that were important to me. Obviously, Manchester United is important to me, always has been since I was 18, 17, when I realized who they were. And that's 40-some years ago. I also talk about politics on here, and I talk about a lot of other things that kind of hinted in that video, identity politics and stuff like that, and why we get so, how in the West we pretty much cucked everybody else. So I do want to talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk about the game on Saturday. Hopefully I'll be able to see it. I'm supposed to pick up flags for at the cemeteries, all the flags for Memorial Day. I do it every week, every year. I should be able to see the first half anyway, and hopefully the game's close. I'll tell you who I think should start, and who I think actually Ten Hag will start. Before we do that, let's just go ahead and talk about the response to my video. And the reason why I did that video, it didn't come out of a vacuum, as they say in the States. Mark has been doing this shit for a while. I started watching him when he had about 30,000 viewers. And he's getting close to 2 million on his main channel. And it's great for him. You know, I remember back in the day, he would actually respond to me in the comments, because I was one of maybe 200 or 300 people that were in the comments. And because my name, which some people say it's a slur, because it says it's Man U fanatic, they think because Man U is a bad thing. I get it. I know the history about that. But I also know there are hundreds of former players, when they talk about their time at Manchester United, that they say Man U all the fucking time. I talked to Rodney Marsh years ago. Now, he played for Manchester City, and he talked about Man U stuff all the time. Now, maybe he just said it because he didn't like Manchester United. I don't know. But I'm not going to change my name, because that's what I've had for like 30 years, or the 20 years at the minute that the internet's been around. I've been using that thing at redcafe.net, was one of the first forums for Manchester United, and that name's been there before we won the treble. So it's 24 years now. I'm not going to change it because somebody thinks it's a slur to Manchester United. People get upset, kind of weird, in a way. And I get it. I do. I understand the background in it, okay? But I'm not going to change it. You just call me a stupid American, and we'll just go along with that, okay? But anyway, nobody really argued my point. They just say they still believe that the British media is so biased and only never do, and he says anything bad about British players. I think that's a false equivalency. But I want to talk about what Mark said yesterday. And again, I'm just watching it. He's talking about maybe new things about the ownership, and I'm like, okay, and I'm still going to watch the guy, because he has contacts in the club. He has a huge platform. He probably gets more information than other people do. I watch other YouTube channels as well that I think are better than his, but his was kind of the first and got so big, and now he's almost corporated now. He doesn't want to say he's part of the mainstream media, but he kind of is because he's on Talk Sports all the time. So he kind of is. But he talked about Roy King, and Roy King said that he would get rid of our goalkeeper, David De Gea. And he said correctly that David Keane has been talking about that for years, and he has. And I've talked about this for 5 or 6 years as well. I think he's a serviceable keeper. It's great he saved that penalty against Fulham. That helped the cause and it helped our team to get back together. But he's been around a long time at Manchester United, and the game has evolved. I'm not saying it's better. I don't think it is better. Okay, it's like when I look at the NBA last night. I said this before Game 7. But this game is going to be decided on how many, what their percentages are when it comes to shooting 3-point shots. And that's exactly what happened. They played 70 shots from both teams. They made 23. Unfortunately for Boston, they only made 9 out of the 30 or the 42 that they shot. And meanwhile, Philadelphia hit 8, half of theirs. It's destroyed the game. There's no real post play anymore. And it's happened that way, not the same type of way in soccer, but it kind of has. We only want the idea that somebody's so fast that's because that's big speed kills, as they say. And what we're seeing with City now, holding the ball, how we can hold on the ball, and some other teams can actually hold on the ball. That's nice to see. So the game has changed. They want to start from the back. So you need a goalkeeper that can do well with his foot. Now Dave can save with his feet, but he's not elite when it comes to playing out of the back. Now personally, I don't like it. I didn't like it back in the 70s when they kicked the ball back to the goalkeeper and he just put it down the field. I liked it somewhere after that when the goalkeeper was involved to start offense. But now it's like we got to stop it and go right or left and try to go up that way, and other teams just pressed, and this what happens is the defense now presses that to get turnovers, and then they lead to scoring opportunities. I really don't like that, but that's how the game is going. So if we're going to do that, and I think that the coach, Ten Hag, has been very forthright when he's talking about David. He said that he's improved in all these areas, but he's still not where he needs to be. And if we're going to pay him probably 250,000 a week, we might look elsewhere. Now, he's been great this year. He's had some issues, but even Schmeichel had issues in the back. So this is what happens to me. I ramble on, but I'm going to go back to Mark said, and he said basically the same thing. And he said at first, he said this forever about David De Gea. And then he had to consider and say, I don't really understand, but it's just his foreign bias thing. I'm like, okay, he's been saying this forever. Do you think that Roy King gives a shit that he's from Spain? I mean, it's like, okay, people don't understand what is really considered a foreign in this country. Is it just people that are not? I mean, it's because they're maybe a little darker because you're from Spain. I mean, Holland got a lot of shit before he came in the Premiership, saying he was coming from a farmers league, and he would not come to the Premiership and just dominate like he has. And there was all these people that said this about him, and they've all been proven wrong. But it's one of those weird things, and I'm going to do an analogy like Mark likes to do. He does this all the time on his show. And again, I've been watching him since he basically started. Maybe I didn't miss the first 2 or 3 months of it. He held these analogies. It's like, man, I'm driving around and I never see this car. This, like, let's say a VW Beetle when it came out, the new ones, let's say. And like, man, I just saw one. The car I bought was a Genesis GV70. Never saw it around. And as soon as you notice in your mind you haven't seen it, or now you see it everywhere. And this is what people do when they think that the British media is always going against foreign players. That is just absolute bullshit. I don't live in England, but I lived there, believe me, in the late 90s. in early 2000, and they railed against almost all the English players, including Beckham. They almost tried to kill him. That they said that he was. I mean, the headlines were boys or I don't want to bring it up, but it was so bad. And now, personally, you might have some bias anyway. Why shouldn't you be more biased when it comes to your own type of people? I mean, I don't really think that's a big issue. But there have been so many foreign players that come to the Premiership and didn't do well. But it's one of those things. Like I said, Holland came from the Bundesliga. Remember, we got Mkhitaryan. We thought he was going to be great. He wasn't a great player. Sancho is having the same issue. He was grown up in the Bundesliga, and he's not really played that well. Now he's apparently he's going past now. He's trying to get to the point that he's pretty good. But it's like once in his mind that he thinks there's some abuse against a foreign player that he likes. Now he was talking about you can't be Martial FC, you can't be Ronaldo, even though he's always been Ronaldo FC. You can't be Pogba FC. No one's always the foreign players that have the FC behind them. And if you are, you're not part of the team. And look, you're allowed to criticize. And we already know that the media in England is basically a parody of itself. But when he says pundits or just have this agenda against foreign players, maybe they did 30 years ago. I mean, Sir Alex Ferguson said the shit about Wenger, saying he doesn't know shit about the Premiership. He was in Japan. I mean, you can find that on YouTube when he said that. And Wenger had the greatest managerial success in the Premiership underneath Ferguson all those years. And they stopped us from winning a couple of championships. And he played a great style of football. I mean, you can't even compare the Arsenal from now to that Arsenal team in the 90s. They were unbelievable. And they just had to play they had to play the same time that we were around. That our team, one of our best teams, was around. And it happens a lot. I mean, it's like we lost to Arsenal twice in the Champions League final because they were the best team in the world. We just had to be second. So it happens. But it's this idea that there's this agenda. They wake up in the morning and say, let's see what I can say about foreign players. Wait a second, only because they look more darker than me. Especially if they come from Africa, I'm really going to say something bad about them because they're not very smart. You know, that whole stereotypical thing. And can a black goalkeeper do well in the Premiership? The game has changed so much that most teams are dominated by Africans that actually start. I don't know if that's good or bad. Personally, I don't think it's good. I think that, and I said this before in my video before, and it's funny because I started saying that stuff about Mark, and people left. I mean, people don't like to listen to me. I don't have a great, I'm not having any charisma. You know, I just don't have it. I just talk of what I believe and stuff, and then I listen to other people's viewpoints. But they left before that part. I said that there's a reason why. Excuse me, my phone is starting. Or not starting. And I'm sure it's a scam. And it is. So they didn't listen to the last part where I said that it's very important that the big teams in England should be basically English players or Scottish players or Irish players or Welsh players. It should be. Because you want it to be somewhat native to that whole area. So the Premiership plays a certain type of play. There's no way you can't tell me you can't find enough players because they're littered all through the Championship and League One and other places around the world. There are players that are native, let's say. Now, like I said, the game has changed, and people think you have to have a certain type of player. It's like Diallo. He's had a great year at Sunderland. We paid a lot of money for him. I still don't think he's good enough to play at this level. I could be 100% wrong, but he's not really that fast either. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. He's kind of like Sancho, but even smaller than him. I mean, I like Palestri. I like him overall. So people watch this and they didn't see what I really wanted to say, what I said on there, and you kind of lose a little of how your passion for your team changes when everything changes on it. And yes, part of that is demographic. It is. When you normally see people that were around Manchester that were 99% white, and your old team is now 80% black, that whole thing that on the other side, if you're black and say, I need to see my representation in film or in sport or in the more boardroom, all that's okay. Everybody said that's fine. But if you're somebody who happens to be a native from a white country, people look to us and say, well, that's kind of racist for you saying that. I'm all about merit based. If you're the best, you should play. But there are a lot of players that they just buy because they believe a certain scenario. And I don't want to go into certain groups of people that actually grow up faster physiologically. And so they look like they're better players early on. I could talk about, there's so many players that look so good when they're 18, 19, 20 because they're a man, when a lot of the other people they're going against are not really grown into what they're supposed to be. Kane's one of those players. He was way down below in league, 2 or 3, I guess it was, and he got better over the years. He grew into a man. He honed his craft. But if you look at most people now, and this happens a lot in the United States and our type of sports, is they see somebody and they just look at the numbers on the clock, that they run faster, they jump higher, whatever. And they start at the earliest age they can do it. Now, obviously they do it in soccer or football in the United States or in England, and they start doing that. And the other people are kind of like, well, man, I'm not gonna go in this way. You have to have that fortitude, that mentality to stick with it. If not, people just leave and they don't stay on with it. There's no way with a country that's 87% white that they would have players that could have 4 or 5 or 6 should start from Manchester United, that should be from England, they should be Scottish, they should be whatever. It should be that way. I don't like looking at the French national team, and almost everybody that's on that team is African. Now, I get it. Once you get there, you become naturalized, and you're citizens of the country, and you want to play for France, and you're the better player. That's what happens, I guess. But it's not right. So, and I don't, I get it when France wins the World Cup, they say that Africa won the World Cup, because it's one of those things when you start going down that identity politics shit, and Mark kind of does it here. He's calling out all British press because these are white men that are railing against foreigners because they don't look like them. There isn't any other reason for him to be upsetting about saying this at all. He thinks there's an agenda because they're a foreigner. And normally when it comes to that now, in this age, it's based on the color of your skin. So I hit it at that in that other video. Nobody really called me out on it. So obviously people didn't watch the video all the way through. It wasn't that long of a video. We could have done that. And I was ready for that debate. And I'm still ready for that debate. I know that there could be a great United team that's basically comprised with UK players on it. You can have a couple of them. Obviously, I like Casemiro. I love him. We need him. But I think the team should be dominated by native players. I get it. It's a worldwide game. I get all that, and I know I'm an old dude. I get that. But I'm just saying people are not going to support the team as much anyway. We already look at them as a bunch of divas most of the time. It's rare that they're almost human to us until they fail, and then when they come back, then we say they're kind of like us. They're kind of like bums, like we are. But I still watch it every day, and I love it when Rashford scores. I love it when Casemiro scores. It's all that I love. I don't care if it's Bruno or not. Once you are playing for the team, it's not your fault that you're here, okay? It's not your fault that the team decided to buy you. Once you put the shirt on under that badge, you're Manchester United. We have to support you. When the game's over or the season's over, if we have a criticism of your game, especially when you don't track back, which I had with so many people have gone on about Sancho, but apparently Mark doesn't think. Well, of course he has. Because back in the day when all those 3 players missed the penalties in the Euro final because they happened to be native black people, everybody said it was all racist for saying that, and all the racial shit came from outside of England. There was nobody on the United States that came over and said anything. it was everybody in the Middle East or in Africa or whatever that was saying shit. It wasn't really nobody in there, and they made a big issue about it. And now they're still kneeling before the game. They did it before this, I guess, for what happened with Vinicius. Whatever. Okay, we need to get past it. Just like Morgan Freeman says, why are we going to have a Black History Month? Should my race be limited to 1 month? I mean, once you go down the the identity politics stuff, it affects everything. So his opinion is clearly raced on that. He believes, because if somebody is a British media, a former player, said something, never even brings up their nationality, says, that David De Gea isn't a good player for the modern game, and he's been around there for 12 years, it's probably time for him to get rid of, and I don't really like how he controls himself in the box. He ends up too many mistakes. Now they have an agenda because these guys are foreign. It's laughable on its face. Now, overall, it's very possible, if you look at statistical analysis, you might actually have it, that they actually say things disparaging more about foreign players. But it's doubtful, because you have the legacy media, and then you have the new one. You've got Twitter and YouTube and all that stuff, and every time it's called out, anytime somebody says something critical about a foreign player, there are thousands of people on the internet that are defending him and saying the British media is racist or whatever. It happens all the time. It's not like they get checked. They don't get unchecked. It's like Mark's not doing anything that other people haven't done. I mean, he just continually pushed this agenda all the time. Like, these guys wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to slate a guy because they happen to be from another country, or they look differently than me. We're past that. English people are past that. I mean, first people to get rid of slavery was them before us. In their common law, they changed all that shit 200 years ago. It just, like I said, that idea, it seeps in the mind. So it just pops in your mind. Oh, well, he must be this or that. It's just, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Always, there's anecdotal evidence all the time when stuff like this happens, but it's not some conspiracy of the pundits saying that they're not going to do anything or say bad things about, or there's not this bias in the media that says we're never going to say anything bad about English players. Now, there are former players that will not say anything bad about players they played with, and they don't want to have players on the English team because we know what happens. I mean, if you get said things about you, a lot of guys can't deal with that because they're on social media themselves and they're thin-skinned and they can't play for them. I mean, we still don't know what happened to Sancho. Something may happen to him. I don't know if it's based on what happened before, but they don't want to do it because they don't want to hurt their chances of doing well in the tournaments that they're in. But when they're having their own little podcasts and stuff, they talk about, Harry needs to be. I mean, Harry Maguire, and people are like, we can't compare. Harry Maguire has had more bad press, whether it's play or what he's done before, than any other player in England. It's not even close. And so is Kane. When Kane apparently flops, it's all over the back places on the press. It's everywhere, and other fan sites are just talking about how much he flaps or all this shit. And then if we say that Anthony's a flop, even though he plays for Manchester United, I think he's getting better over his years. I don't think he's better than Sancho, but I think he eventually might be. We were saying something about how he plays, but because we are critical of him now, there's a bias on our side. And what guys like Mark and other people are trying to say that's rooted in racism, and it's not. It absolutely is not. And if you want to go at the very lowest level, if we're gonna look at how the human condition, we always look at the people. And now this is where people are gonna say it's basically the same thing. You do look at people a little bit differently than the people that you're used to, and it could be based on race, it could be based on class or that type of thing. And Humans have a hard time not being tribalistic. We are. So when I say personally, it would if I was so tribalistic, I want the entire Manchester United team be English and all be white. That's not possible. England is not an all white country anymore. Already it's one of those weird things because they want diversity everywhere, right? But they don't want it in sport because if it was more diverse, if it was based on statistics of population, Manchester United should have 8 players that are English, that are white. They don't. Right now, I know it's going to change. By the time I die, and people that watch this video, when they die, England will probably 50-50. So, but even then, it'll probably 80 or 90% that start for Manchester United will not be quote unquote native born. They'll be blacks or something that came in, Muslims that came in, whatever. And we have that in the United States as well. 12%, 3%, 12 to 13% of this population is black. Of the sports that we play, it's probably 2 to 3% of the entire population are the ones that dominate everything. And we also have that when it comes to finance of a different type of group as well. But they want diversity for this. They only want it where they want it to have. It's where white men are dominating. Now we have to have diversity, and that's only really happens in Western white countries. And people don't want to hear that terminology because is all the African nations, are they black countries? Is China or is Japan basically all Japanese? Japanese? I mean, they all are. But when we talk about European stuff, we can't say stuff like that. I'm bullshit with that. I'll say what I'm going to say. This has all been pushed by the same people, and it's not to help us. It's trying to divide us. We had it kind of all figured out in the 80s and the 90s. This whole race shit was kind of like taken care of. We stopped from the colleges doing all their stupid shit they're trying to do with free speech. We try to stop them. Most of them were liberals that stopped all that. But now the liberals, they only want speech based on their tenet of what speech is. They still believe that hate speech is a real thing. In the United States, you should be able to say anything. Now, there are other countries that don't have that. I get that. Which is stupid, But here right now, I can say something. I might lose my YouTube channel, but if I say a similar thing in Germany, I might actually get taken off to jail. When I question the narrative of the Holocaust, I do it from a scientific and logical area because I believed all of it when I was younger, and clearly shit happened, but. We can't have the conversation. We used to have it on the morning shows in the United States. All the time they talked about it because there were revisionists that came out and said, there's something a little bit off about this. And we had that conversation all the time. People forget how, and this is when we only had 3 channels and a couple things on a cable or something. But every day they talk about stuff like this, and it was the free speech. It was the greatness of this country, and we've lost it here. So they only want speech when they want it. They only want diversity when it's good for them, for their group. And let me go ahead and I'm going to talk forever. But let me talk about who I think should start. And I'm going to say something about some of the transgender stuff here, and I'll let it go from here. I know I've been talking forever and probably won't get anybody to watch this, but I just want to get off my chest. It helps me because it gets off my stress. I just don't understand why he continually goes down this road. If there is no agenda, is Rio Ferdinand going to get up there and say, "Well, I hate foreign players"? And what is actually foreign? I mean, you got Keane, who's Irish. He's been slagging English players forever. So it's just who it is that's just doing it. What was I going to say? Oh, who's going to start? What I think what's going to happen. Let me tell you what I think is going to. I think. What I think we should start with, and I think that what Ten Hag will do. And I think it's basically he's rewarding the players that have been there forever that got him to this point. So I think that's why he's going to do what he's going to do. But I think it should be Shaw, Lindelof, Varane, Wan-Bissaka, Casemiro, Fred, Bruno. I don't want him outside or on the wing. Rashford, Sancho, and Martial. For Martial, it's probably going to be his last game, and I think that he's had a couple of goals, and I think he's a smart player. I think he's lost a step. His confidence is not 100% yet there, but I think we have to start with him there. What I think he's going to do, he's going to put Bruno out wide, and he's going to bring in Eriksson. So Fred will be on the bench. And you have Rashford and Martial there. So I think the only real change is Bruno's going to play out on the right, and you're going to have. Maybe he'll put in if Bruno's going to be out right. He might put in McTominay in there. If I'm going to put him out. Now, I think the only change is going to be the Fred versus Eriksson. And I think he believes that if it's close or we're up by a goal, then you're being Fred in for the last 30 minutes and he'll shut down the midfield. And I think that's what he's going to do. It's interesting to see that City has not really been playing well the last couple of weeks. Maybe they have the ability to just turn on the switch and do what has to be done. But going into your cup finals and you're not scoring goals, yeah, I know there are B teams out there, but they're not scoring. We'll see. They might put 5 against us, and so. And before I go, thank you for watching. This transgender thing, when we're talking about identity politics and all that, it's just interesting to me when females now are upset because this people that they voted for, or their ideology that they mostly support is now invading their spaces. Then they want to stop it. Like Roundy or the girl Gaines from University of Kentucky, and she's right. But where was she when this all started? And it's like it's only when they start going because women in this country have been a quote unquote an oppressed group, so they have all the diversity issue as well. I mean, they get favoritism to get to colleges. They dominate in colleges anyway. Men are not going to school. School for a white man especially is indoctrination centers, and they just basically look at you as they don't look at you for your character or anything. They just say you're a white man and you're probably straight, so you're the problem for everything. You exude that toxic masculinity, and you're the oppressor. Everybody else around you are all the oppressed, and they just push this down. And it's in our high schools, and it's now in the grade schools, and that's all the CRT and all that stuff. And but once the identity politics gets in it, and it ends up killing itself. But on the way, it destroys everything else, and we just lose the trust that you have with your fellow citizens. And anyway, that's another video about race and homogeneity. So just let me know what you think. Who do you think we should start the 11 on Saturday? It's going to be a very interesting game. I think we can win it. I don't understand why people think we don't have a chance. We have beaten City, their best teams, with Fred and McTominay in midfield. And we did it a couple times. We did it with Ole as the coach. The only difference is they have Holland. And if we can mark him out of the game, I don't know they're better. I really don't think they're better everywhere else on the field that they used to be. I don't think they are. They're good teams. Man, they could win the treble. But our job is to stop that from happening. And just let me know in the comments and subscribe if you want. And we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.